Alright, so for context, this is a re-upload of a video originally published in January. It was made publicly available for 2 days on a channel called I'm Not Here. The reason for it being there in the first place was explained in this update video. Yep, there it is. Anyways, that channel is gone. Yeah, it's a blank 404 page now. That is the full extent of my knowledge of what happened, and it's neither mine nor anyone's business to inquire further because it doesn't really matter at this point. This isn't like a machinima situation either. This was made purely for fun, and I'm still good friends with this individual. The only reason I'm mentioning this is because of a few meta jokes pointing to the fact that the video is on another channel. I just thought that would be confusing to those who didn't know what happened. I'll continue to post my own content on here. That goes without saying. Without further ado, here's every artist I've seen live. Enjoy!
Hello everyone. You're probably wondering, where the heck is Johnny? I called it. This guy, this no talent, whoever he is, kidnapped Johnny and shot him out of a cannon into space. Case closed. Not exactly. My name is Idiot Boy, and I, along with a couple others, were given the opportunity to collaborate and post new content on the I'm Not Here channel. As a bona fide superfan of these videos and Johnny's face, I'm excited to see how this pans out. Now, I primarily talk about music on my channel, so I thought what better way to introduce myself here than to talk about concerts. You know, those things that people go to, myself included. Most, if not all of them, have a cool story behind them, and I thought that would be fun to talk about. So I'm going to separate these into 3 distinctive categories, starting with... Now, if that makes it sound non-consensual, you'd be right. Because that's just what being a kid is. Going to the shoe store against your will. Eating peas. However, taking me to see the future president of the United States, Kid Rock, is a much different story. My parents would always play 80s hair metal for me growing up, so I think that they were mostly there for Bon Jovi. But these two artists touring together has always been such a weird pairing to me. It's 2 different eras, you know? I'm sure it was a good show. I was only 8 years old and was familiar with more than a couple of their tunes, but I would not have gone to this at any other point in my life. Fun fact, my dad packed earplugs for us, but like a rebel I said, no lol, and I thought it was so cool to not wear them that I kept that attitude until sometime last year after being front row without any ear protection. Twice. We'll get to that. Okay, so the weirdest thing about this one is that I'm not sure that it actually happened. Not like it's an SCP or whatever you people are into. I'm saying I can vividly remember seeing another hair metal artist, but the details are fuzzy. Here is what I definitively know. My brother, Giddy TV, subscribe, told me that we saw the band who made Girls, 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 and I do remember Every Rose Has Its Thorn being played. So it's settled then, right? Wrong! I looked up every venue in my area that we could have possibly gone to, and it is not how I pictured it in my mind. The photographic memory of this experience was this small grassy area where people could lay down blankets and chairs. And the only place that could have possibly fit this bill is one that I returned to earlier this year to see another act. And the parking lot was like in a completely different location than what I remember. So like, did this happen or what? Something about this show just doesn't add up for me. Like, I saw them, but I'm not sure how I saw them. I'm also blanking on whether we arrived in time to catch the New York Dolls or not. There's a chance, but at this point, I'm not going to speculate any further. Oh, and my brother also told me he wanted to leave the show early, just so he could play on his DS. But once we got to the car, he realized the battery was very low, and we didn't have a car charger, so there was no point. Hashtag relatable, am I right? I can't recall if I asked for these tickets or not, which is half the reason why I put it in this category, but I do remember being given them as a birthday present. My dad and I both love Rush. I grew up hearing all their radio hits countless times up to that point, and seeing them for the R40 tour was probably the coolest / nerdiest thing I've ever done with another family member. I still go back and watch a couple of the grainy videos I managed to capture from time to time, and it's easy to write the whole thing off as Super Bowl halftimey, but nah dude, these guys still rock hard. It's the first time I ever felt starstruck seeing an artist right in front of me, and that's really important because it led me to ask my parents to go to more concerts from here on out. You can see where this is going. Not only was this the first time I got to pick the artist, but it was also the least amount of time I had to wait to see said artist. My parents just dropped it on me like, oh yeah, you're gonna see the best emo band of the 2000s in like 4 days. Like, you can't just say that to a 14-year-old without expecting a stroke or something. But they did this to prepare me for the real world, so honestly, I respect that. Here's a photo of me wearing a fedora and holding a sign saying I do not look like their lead singer Patrick Stump. I thought it was pretty funny. They wouldn't let me into the venue with it, so we got maybe 5 minutes of use out of it. It's the memories that last. This is also the first concert with opening acts whom I was familiar with beforehand, and wow. AWOL Nation, huh? Like, I love Sale as much as the next guy, and they played a decent set, but all I can think about in retrospect is how these guys kinda fell off afterwards. But I gotta give them credit. At least I can remember a couple of their songs, which cannot be said for Paris, who I tried liking, but just couldn't get into, even at the time.
Nah, I was there for Fall Out Boy, and they killed it as they always do. They have so many hits under their belt that it's nearly impossible for them to run out of crowd pleasers, and they played them all!
Not only was I genuinely enthralled yet again, but also blissfully unaware that Mania would suck as much as it did. This is another one of those Super Bowl halftime-esque legacy shows that doesn't quite capture the same feelings you get from an artist you love. But even with that caveat, come on. It's David Gilmour, one of the greatest guitarists in rock history, and incoming hot take. I don't think his solo stuff is that bad, at least compared to Roger Waters' solo offerings. This set didn't try to be anything it wasn't, just some pleasant material off of his latest album, mixed in with some classic Floyd hits, which were always a nice surprise. All of the other touring musicians did a great job as well. You could tell he was a very humble guy despite playing these relaxed jazz rock cuts in a giant stadium. But don't worry, some of them had a faster tempo. Now even today, this was huge. It's hard to find the words to even describe how I felt seeing Radiohead, of all bands, right after A Moon-Shaped Pool came out. The setlist was something truly special. They played Let Down for the first time in 10 years and I nearly cried. Every single song felt unique and organic, like they weren't even trying to emulate the studio recording. It was the best of times, it was the blurst of times, especially during the opener where they played the same 2 notes for 20 minutes. That was definitely what you call the blurst of times. Now Radiohead, I like ya, but come on. You're no 21 Pilot. Okay, I want to call this the last dying breath of my quote-unquote emo phase in high school. Even though their music is not in that category, a lot of emos really love their music, and that didn't change when they started getting hits on pop radio. But it did get to the point where my mom was enough of a fan to want to come and see them too. Same thing goes for Fall Out Boy, which is cool and nice. I can appreciate that aspect of their music, even though it kind of made them a punchline.
Really think we should put on something else?
You got it. Coming up, we got a brand new single from 21 Pilots.
Ooh, back to the podcast.
Regardless of how I or anyone feels about their music right now, they put on a great show for us. They really are one of the best live acts at their level of popularity. It's bombastic and feels larger than life, even though it's just 2 guys. It was a great time, even if the openers were not that. We actually missed most of John Bellion's set because of traffic outside the venue. R.I.P. We got to our seats right when he was playing my favorite song of his, New York Soul Part 2. And then he was finished, never to be seen again. So based on that song alone, I'm gonna give his set a solid 6 out of 10. The same can't be said for Judah and the Lion, who combined all the worst aspects of Imagine Dragons and Mumford & Sons. The banjo's never gonna be cool again, guys. Just pack it in, please. I think they even did a cover of some popular song in their style. Or wait, no, that was probably 21 Pilots, right? They usually do covers during their set. That's the thing about this concert, I don't remember much from it. Alright, here goes. I attended the last Brockhampton concert ever performed with Amir Van. For those who are unfamiliar, he's the guy who was on their album covers. Kind of an important guy, you know? The very next day was their infamous Boston Calling show, where all of the other members were captured crying on stage. And the day after that comes the announcement that Amir is no longer in the group. The tour is canceled, Puppy is canceled, Amir is, well, yeah. Needless to say, it was a very eventful weekend. Now, does that mean the concert I attended was some high-stakes event that needs to be told? Not really. If anything, the show was very short. Very, very short. Maybe 30 to 40 minutes long. All I know is that when it ended, everyone thought there would be more. An encore, maybe? But no, we were told to clear out, which felt kind of anticlimactic, but considering there was no opening act, I understand better in retrospect. As for Amir's presence, I'm sure the news was in the back of everyone's minds. You can't just forget these things. I even cited quote-unquote Amir shit in my initial Instagram story as being the potential reason why the show ended so quickly, but seeing the original lineup perform their best material in some small venue is something I'm always going to cherish regardless. Whether it was for 2 minutes or 2 seconds, I consider myself lucky. This one's just funny. I shaved my head and cosplayed as Fantano at his own show and managed to get on his Instagram. I'm on the right, by the way. That's how good this cosplay was. You could see the fear in my eyes. The show itself was very casual. It opened with a song from Cal Chesta, followed by a very comedic slideshow. The segment I remember most was when we were given random quotes and asked whether Kanye said it or Charles Manson. No comment. Then he gave an exclusive stink piece on a Paul Joseph Watson video, which made my parents walk out early.
It has a little something for everyone.
Nothing will be as funny as Rivers Cuomo's face in the Fred video, however.
Oh my god, it's Weezer!
I'm gonna be perfectly honest here. This is probably my favorite concert in terms of lineup. Say whatever you want about Basement, they were okay, but netting the Pixies as one of your opening acts is just awesome. That's back-to-back quality from two bands I honestly adore. Now, I made the grave mistake of wearing my Weezer shirt to the concert like a nerd, but if you're gonna be lame, is there anywhere more fitting than a fucking Weezer concert? That's what I thought. So we're about halfway through this list, and it turns out I've seen a lot of artists in the past few years. The last one for a while before The Thing was this super underground act called Velvet Negroni. You probably haven't heard of them because their music is bad. Unlike Tame Impala, who feature one of the best light shows to accompany their set. It's really rare for a live act to stress the visual aspect that fits the performance, and I think they stand out in that regard. They're also one of those bands that has enough quality material to not only justify the big, chunky runtime, but also performing in a giant stadium. Seeing them anywhere other than one of those, or like a festival, is just not ideal, I'd imagine. But yeah, I didn't write an ending for this one, so it's just but yeah, comma. Can someone, down in the comments, can someone just explain Tame Impala for me? How they sound to you? And I'll read everything. Thanks. Alright, now we're getting to artists I couldn't have asked my mommy and daddy to see otherwise. Tame Impala is fun for the whole family, but experimental hip-hop? Nuh-uh. So in honor of Stepa J. Groggs, rest in peace, I went to see Injury Reserve in person, right off the heels of their latest record, By the Time I Get to Phoenix. Not only did I want to see how such a forward-thinking record would be performed live, but it was also because this group was immensely important to me during high school. I still feel like they never got their fair due in terms of popularity. Now, my show was distinct for opening with an exclusive performance by the Indigenous Enterprise. The crowd opened up a large pit and allowed these highly skilled dancers and drummers to go truly bonkers. And would you look at that, the members of Injury Reserve are in the crowd right across from me. Are you sure that's them? Yep, that's them. Don't freak out. Yep, we're doing this. This was also the most cathartic portion of the night because we all got to shout F Christopher Columbus on Indigenous Peoples Day, which is always fun. After all that, there was who influenced the sound of this record pretty heavily. And I was reading somewhere before the show that his live set didn't really translate well. Like at other shows, people didn't really understand what he was going for, so they would be talking over him the whole time. But that was absolutely not the case at the show I attended. The entire room was captivated by his music, which is difficult to pull off with just one dude and a violinist. Now I call upon you, viewer, to imagine what this album would sound like if it were performed live in full, because nothing that I say here can come close to describing what it felt like to experience that in person. It was the culmination of an entire underground movement happening right there in front of me. Really impressive stuff. My first ska punk show, and hopefully not the last. Shout out to Tom Ska for getting me into this particular band, and a few others I plan on talking about. Everything Goes Numb just so happens to be my highest rated ska punk release, so it was really surreal to experience songs from that record in a mosh pit. I'm not enough of a ska punk fan to start decorating myself in checkerboard patterns just yet, but I know a good band when I hear them. It feels so refreshing to say that Animal Collective released a great album recently, something that's on par with their work in the 2000s. I had to drop everything to see them in person, and they just blew me away. They're one of those acts that don't rely on their past material. They'll start jamming out for 13 minutes straight, and when you look up the song lyrics, it's not something they've released yet. Not only did I see these last two bands at the same venue, but I also made the same mistake of being in the front row without wearing earplugs. Luckily, I have learned the error of my ways. Wear protection, kids. These guys have been on a roll for such a long time, and their presence is only getting bigger each year, which is cool because they've released some of my favorite music. I'm not ashamed to admit Blade is my most played artist of all time, and as a person who considers themselves drained, You thought I was just talking about music today. Well, it turns out once you physically go out of your way to see Drain Gang, Rugrats music, and ska punk back to back, that's when you've lowered your standards enough and need something new in your life. Enter Spider-Ham, or as he's known in the physical realm, John Mulaney. This set primarily covered his experiences in rehab, which is always fun. I would say the vibe was a lot more bitter this time around, which fit the subject matter perfectly. Even if I wasn't laughing out loud the entire time, I could appreciate the storytelling at play because it was really captivating to witness this new side of his persona. I think my favorite bit was when the newspaper arrived with his picture on the front cover and no one at the clinic recognized him, so we had to be like, ah, the mail's here, and he's just like desperately pointing to it. So, on a whim, my brother was like, want to see the two best artists of our generation next week? And I went, this isn't Maroon 5 and the Chainsmokers, but eventually, he convinced me to see the musical Mad Lads themselves, Kendrick Lamar, and Baby Keem, who we've both been fans of for a very long time. I mean, To Pimp a Butterfly was the first rap album I ever heard, so it's not that big a deal, you know? This was probably the most surreal experience I've had lately, just seeing these guys in person. Their breath control was insane, that's what everyone says. Nearly every single song was iconic, and the set design was wholly unique. I've never seen such a simple backdrop be used in a variety of different ways like that before. There were like 5 different times where I was like, damn, they're going all out on this one. This has gotta be the closer. And it just kept on going from there and being incredible. They're just like that. Now, remember when I said nothing was funnier than Rivers Cuomo's face in the iconic YouTube video, Fred and Weezer Go to the Moon? Well, the only exception to that is Doug Stanhope, who's, well, he's my favorite comedian. I've probably spent entire days of my life just listening to this man speak on a variety of different cultural issues. His run in the 2000s is unmatched. Every fan of his work knows that by now, but there aren't enough people who are even aware of this dude's talent. I love his rants, the way he can justify practically anything through comedy, even if it sounds absurd at first. His very particular descriptions of certain things.
You're gonna spend 25 years so Milky Eye Jim can get a government subsidized bong hit of some dirt weed. I want to buy mushrooms at Walmart tomorrow. Let's just fight this one out.
And all of these aspects were on full display in his act. He's the only comedian I've seen make fun of cancel culture without blowing it out of proportion or acting like it's the most important thing in the world when it isn't. And the opposite attitude he held was never coded in this smug persona either. Cross his arms. Cancel culture? No one can cancel me, for I am uncancelable. It takes a lot to dangle between that fine line, and Stanhope was able to do so with ease. It took nearly 3 years of rescheduling and, thing I can't say, happening for this concert to occur, and it was worth the wait. My middle school self, who was sure this band was over for good, had been proven wrong that night. It was a dream come true, I tell ya. If only the opening acts were better. Yeah, I hate to be picky throughout the whole fucking video, but we are talking about the best 2000s emo band, paired up with the worst 2000s emo band that I've heard. So it's all I feel like pointing out. Don't worry, it wasn't all bad. They covered my favorite Killer song, so that's a plus. Oh, and the folk punk outfit before them would start every song like, this is a fucking protest song! Like we couldn't tell that for ourselves. The contrast of these two sets with My Chemical Romance playing hit after hit after hit after hit is mind-boggling in the best way possible. 10 out of 10, perfect concert, nothing wrong with it. And last, but certainly not least, fucking Ween. I've come around heavily to these guys recently. Not only is their early work better than I initially thought, but The Mollusk to White Pepper to Quebec is probably one of the greatest trilogies of albums by any artist. And I'm tired, honk shoe, honk shoe. The Blarney Stone is my alarm clock for this joke.
Get off my ass.
So like any superfan, I kinda sorta freaked out when they played every single song that I wanted to hear. Transdermal Celebration, The Mollusk, Exactly Where I'm At, Chocolate Town, I Don't Want It, and those were just the first couple tracks. Even underrated cuts like Suckin' Blood from the Devil's Hoo Ha and Boys Club got some love. They also jammed out for a long time on I'll Be Your Johnny on the Spot and Fluffy, and now I've come around to those tracks a lot more. Looking back, I really do think this was the perfect set list, which is rare considering these guys never play songs in the same order twice. Also, if any of those song titles made you crack even the tiniest smile, that's your cue to try out Ween for yourself. You're welcome. So, concerts. Those are a thing. That's the moral of the story. The only upcoming concerts I have at the moment are Red Hot Chili Peppers with all these freaking, oh my god, and Blink-182's original lineup with all of these other bands I really enjoy, so that should be fun. But how about you guys? What are some of your favorite concert experiences? I'd love to hear about them in the comments. This has been Idiot Boy for I'm Not Here, and I'll check you later. Bye now.